I'm going to be dropping the people who join into the viewer slot. Sharon, Karen, good to see everybody. Welcome. This will be episode 1. I hit the wrong person. I hit Steve. This will be episode 198 on our YouTube channel. And this will be a conversation with Steve Johnson, who I will be introducing shortly. And sorry, I'm trying to put people in the right place. Thank you. But first, as always, I want to thank our patrons. Let's see if I can hit the right buttons today. All right. Thanks to everybody who has joined our Patreon at the $1 a month level or higher. You can join our Patreon for free, which is like being on our mailing list. You'll get the announcements first, or you can pay to get some extra perks. Sorry, my screen looks a little bit cut off today. I don't know why. Thank you for joining, Jude. I wanted to give a quick introduction of me that I've written this morning. You can all tell me what you think of it. Just so that it's on the thing, and then we'll meet Steve. Hello, I'm Debbie Levitt. I've been working in CX and UX and strategy for decades. Delta CX is my company. We're a full service consultancy that's all about creating change. Has your company or team struggled with customer adoption, satisfaction, and loyalty? How do you balance business goals with what your customers really need? Are you more focused on deadlines than continuously delivering 5-star quality and value to users? We are product, service, and business strategists. We are researchers, designers, innovators, and change agents. We find and solve problems, especially problems you don't know you have or don't know how to solve. Check out our new site at customercentricity.com and book some time to speak with me. All right, so I'm going to be quiet now and say, you know him, you love him from chapter 21 of Customers Know You Suck. Steve Johnson, tell us all about you.
Well, thank you. I've been around product management for decades, since like the 80s decades. And often people introduce me as saying, oh, I took Steve's class a long time ago. Ouch. But anyway, I've done pretty much every job in a software company except for UX designer.
Okay.
And for the last 10 years, I've been working with my own organization called Product Growth Leaders, and we help teams remove the chaos. It seems to me that most teams don't actually have a process. They don't have clarity of roles and responsibilities. And that's why product managers are, doing design, and why designers are doing product management. And that's certainly what we'll be talking about today. But my team works with typically technology-based products and tries to help convert them from project thinking to product thinking.
All right. So I'm going to keep putting everybody into the viewer spot. Sorry about that. So before we talk about what product management should be, tell me a little bit about what product management is today.
Well, gosh, the two are so intertwined. For decades now, product management has been a business role. And then a wonderful thing happened in the early 2000s with the Agile Manifesto. It completely changed the way we think about building products. Unfortunately, along with that came a new definition for the role of product manager. And during that period of the aughts, it seemed product managers stopped being business leaders and started being technologists and designers. And then suddenly, like, there's nobody making business decisions. They're making technical decisions. So over the last few years, I've gotten more and more calls from people saying, could you come help us bring back the strategic role of product management? You know, it's like we were strategic or we were business oriented, and then we got yanked into the wonderful new world of Agile, where the team is self-organizing and there's no management and, you know, whatever. But ultimately, where we are now is more than half the product managers are not doing product management. They're doing project management. They're doing UI design. They're doing UX interviews. They're doing sales engineering. I mean, they're doing a lot of, maybe even a lot of important things, but they're not doing product management.
Yeah, so that of course leads me back to if you had a magic wand, you know, what would you say? What should product managers be most focused on?
Prioritizing for business value. Sales guy comes in and says, hey, I talked to a guy, we ought to build a feature. In fact, I've sketched it out on a napkin. All right, well, there are two things wrong with that. One is, right, n equals 1 is not a valid sample, right? And yet, you know, sales guy says, you know, 100% of the people I talked to 5 minutes ago, you know, that's a completed research study, right? Or, you know, the president comes in and says, you know, I had a dream last night and, you know, we need to stop doing what we were doing and start doing the new things that we're doing, you know, and even, you know, even a customer says, hey, I want this thing. And one of the stories that I really like is the story of the snow shovel. 100 years ago, somebody said to a blacksmith, would you build me a big shovel? And the blacksmith did. And now in the 21st century, every year in the United States, 100 people die shoveling snow. And these same people would never consider digging a ditch, but somehow or another, they take their shovel and they go out and try to pick up snow. But a UX designer looks at that and says, no, you're solving the wrong problem. They don't need to lift the snow. They need to push it. You don't want a snow shovel, you want a snow plow. Right?
Or something better.
What we're really trying to accomplish is to get the car out of the driveway. You know?
Right. Task.
And there might be all sorts of other ways of designing that. But my point is, customers are almost always right about what problem they have, and they're almost always wrong on what feature they need.
Yeah, or I hear a lot of people like to, and I've even had product managers call me up to do interviews, and they've said, what are we missing?
Yeah, you know, people are socializing that too. They think it's a best practice. And you know, another thing, while I'm ranting in here, I can do a little.
Go. We love you.
Well,
and I thought I had the effects. Oh wow, battle
now
of the effects.
Now I cracked myself up. Anyway, I was so busy playing with my buttons, I forgot what story I was going to tell. Ask me that question again.
I don't remember. Someone from the chat help us out. What were we talking about? Oh my God.
All right. Well, we'll just pretend it was cool. But anyway, it seems that product managers, we are almost always given requests for features. And one of the things that I've been doing with teams nowadays is two things. One, writing requirements in the form of a question. It seems like, well, it's like, it seems like we are losing people. Oh, I now remember the other thing I was going to say, but hang on.
Hands on.
There we go. It seems like we're losing a lot of people during the first 3 days of using our product. What are some things that we could do to get them onboarded more quickly? I mean, that is certainly not a feature statement, right? That says
it's like a problem question rather than this is the prescribed solution and mechanism.
Right, right. And I saw an example of a, quote, well-written user story that said, as a user, I want to log on so that I can protect, access my private information or something like that. You know what? That's a feature statement.
Whenever.
said no one ever. Right. That's a feature statement. We've decided we need a logon. So we're reverse engineering that specification to a user story, which seems to be a complete waste of time. And oh, by the way, nobody wants to log on. Right. I mean, nobody said, gosh, I wish I could log on. Right. And it's interesting that Slack came along all these years ago and said, you know what? Passwords are stupid. We're just going to send you a magic link and you can just click it, right? There is no password. So often it seems like people are talking about best practices that have not actually been researched to be proven to, in fact, be best. Furthermore, I don't believe in best practices. I believe there are a lot of common practices. Some of them are good. User stories might be good. I find most user stories are written as a user. I want this feature so that I can have this feature I want, right? But furthermore, I think best practices have to be adapted to your team and your product and your organization and your products. Oh, I said products twice. Best practices are the ones that work for you, not the ones that work for that company over there. I mean, just because Spotify does it that way doesn't mean that works for my B2B enterprise company targeting financial services, right? But taking these common practices and learning about these common practices and adapting them to your organization is what creates best practices. One more note, the other rant I was going to do was Pendo tells us that 80% of features are never used. So, I mean, now we have real data here, right? Pendo is looking at anonymized data across all these products and saying, guess what? Sales guy comes in and says, I sold this feature. Well, the real question we have to ask always is that feature going to move the needle? Is that feature going to do something beyond helping a sales guy close the deal? I mean, I don't believe features do close deals. I can't believe there's a circumstance where the buyer says, I absolutely will not buy this if you don't have Pantone color X on your slide in the upper right-hand corner. I mean, some of this is just nonsense. But it's so galling to imagine the hours and hours and hours we spend building features or even products without any market validation that this is going to be something that people use. And now I'm on a tear. The other thing is people will never reliably forecast the future.
Oh, so true. We know this in CX and UX. You can't ask people, do you like this thing that we're thinking about building that we can't show you right now? And what would you pay for the unknown thing that you can't see right now?
Exactly. And I see it all the time, like, hey, we're thinking about doing X. Would you like that? Well, sure, I guess. And that is not, that's not a sign that people are ready to buy.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just thinking of the premise of the book, The Mom Test. Your mom loves you.
I just battled someone about that on another podcast.
Oh, wow. Well, look, we're reading the same books. Anyway, his fundamental point, though, is when you go to your mom and say, hey, Mom, I'm thinking about leaving my good job and starting my own business as a musician for some random thing I can't think of right now. And she goes, oh, honey, that's a great idea. You'll be great at that. She is also in her head going, oh, my God, is that guy ever going to leave my house? I mean, go be an adult somewhere, right? But they don't say it. And that's what our customers say to us all the time. It's like, oh, honey, I love that idea. And yet in their head, they're like, I would never use that.
The example I keep giving on all these podcasts I've been on lately is I say, look, we might have some sort of data that says people drink liquids and people like to drink these liquids out of a cup. And if we were to survey people or call them up and say, do you drink liquids out of a cup? And they go, yeah, I surely do. And would you like to have a cup? Yeah, I guess I'd like to have a cup. And then we build this cup, which is the size of my head. And holds a liter, and some people will not even be able to grab or hold up because of its weight and size. And then we go, why do people lie to us? They said they wanted a cup and now they're not buying our cup. And I say, hey, I think you might have not had the best data there, or you know, if you showed people the cup, maybe you'd get a little bit of a more direct opinion.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, that reminds me, and gosh, well, anyway, that reminds me of the story of New Coke. I grew up in the South, and so Coke
I'm old
is
enough
like
to remember that.
I'm like a, you know, Coke is like a religious thing down there. Like when I go out to dinner and I order a Coke, they say, "Is Pepsi okay?" I go, "No, it's not. I'd rather have nothing than Pepsi," right? So anyway, in the original Coke
I
taste
die
test,
on this hill, sir.
exactly, they gave people a Coke, a Pepsi, and a new Coke, and blind taste test. Which one do you like better? Everybody chose New Coke because it was sweeter. But what they didn't do is send everybody home with a case of New Coke to see if anybody was still drinking it a week later, because guess what? Nobody was. It was too sweet. And they completely ignored the brand value of real Coke. And there are even people now who say they did that on purpose, which is not possibly true, to get, you know, to resurge the growth of Coca-Cola, but not at all. It could not have happened. Anyway, going back around to the beginning of this whole thing, it seems to me that when I was coming up, a product manager was a business person. They looked at feedback from the market. They looked at market research. They looked at corporate capabilities and said, you know, we have an opportunity to create a new product or add functionality or options to an existing product. And always were we looking at, and what will that do for our customers and ourselves? You know, what is the impact of doing this thing for our customer base, and how will it benefit us? And then we turned the whole thing over to a dev team, which included usually a designer, to figure out what this thing needed to have. And now it seems like we're not doing the business side. And as you've heard me say before, most of the companies I encounter don't even have a UX function. So product management ends up doing everything, right? They're the project manager, the UX designer, the researcher, etc. And I was on a panel about 5 years ago. There were 5 product management, consultants. We all basically agreed in this role of product management being, you know, the business lead. You know, how are we going to make money at this? Is this going to help us keep customers? Is it going to help us grow our customers? Is it going to help us win new customers? Is it going to help us steal customers from the competitor? The last guy says, you know, all of these other pundits are wrong. Product management does everything development doesn't want to do. And I'm like, well, that explains the problem.
Yeah,
so, right. Why don't we have a UX person? Why don't we just get, you know, product management to do it? And the reason product management does it is because they suck at it less than developers do. Right? But that's not the right answer. The right answer is to have a UX person, right?
Please. I want to drag you into a different question. And people watching live, you're welcome to ask questions. People not watching live, watching video, put your questions in the YouTube chat and I'll answer them, or I'll find Steve and we'll answer them. But I dragged you into a LinkedIn conversation a few days ago where someone had posted this screenshot from, the source was a podcast, but I don't really know where the podcast person got the information, but it claimed that if we look at A/B test success, Airbnb's A/B tests fail 92% of the time. I forgot the statistic they had for, I think, Microsoft, and then they had Amazon failing 50% of the time. And underneath it, it said like, you know, and I'm paraphrasing, it said something like, "This is good. This is product management." And my thought was, I don't feel good about this, because an A/B test failing means we knew A wasn't that great. We knew that what we had wasn't great, or it was failing, or it needed to be improved. We came up with B, and we know so little about our audience or design or solving problems or the market or whatever it is, that B was worse. The
Hmm.
thing we came up with to solve our problem was worse than the thing we already had. How did we not know that? Why are we throwing so many spaghetti darts at the wall? And I think I dragged you into that, and I said, what is your take? I don't know what you tend to think about A/B testing or other things, but help. Is this if we have this many A/B tests failing? Is this product management, and is it good product management?
It's neither product management nor good product management. It's research. It's validation research that should be done by qualified researchers. Product management's question is, well, let me do it another way. About a third of the people listening to this will disagree with what I'm going to say. Product managers should love the problem, not the solution. Product managers should be expert on market problems that matter and rely on a solutions team to come up with solutions. And if they come up with two, then they should run some A/B testing to validate which one of those two is the better solution. What I find is the big dysfunction in a lot of teams is the product manager doesn't know what their job is. And so they start doing the same thing I complained about salespeople doing. They start solutioning. They come in and say, hey guys, I was looking at the prototype and I really think this button needs to move up 14 pixels to the right. And you're like, wow, shut the hell up. That ain't your job. The question is, does this display, does this workflow, does this thing solve the customer's problem? That's the validation that needs to be done. And it's appalling to me that, and again, I'm with you, I didn't know the source of these stats. It depends on what you call failure. I mean,
Good question.
right? It seems like maybe 50% is a good number, that we are doing so many tests that we are finding out before we start programming what doesn't work. I mean, Einstein
For
said
A/B tests. So these have been programmed and put out to a percentage
yeah.
of the public. Oh yeah,
Then
I
that's
wish these
a
were
terrible number.
usability tests. These were A/B tests of probably live, merged, delivered things that are just shown to a fraction of people.
Right. Well, then that's a ridiculous response. I mean, not yours, theirs. But I'm reminded of Yahoo doing AZ testing on 26 flavors of purple, and I'm like, only one person in the world could care about that. The president,
CEO. Right? Yeah.
And the rest of us couldn't care less and wouldn't even notice if we were anyway. So I think where you're leading me to is, yeah, if people on the product team, including the product manager, the dev lead, the UX people, actually understood the problem and the people who have the problem, you would not have that kind of failure.
Thank you for that. What I'm going to do is I just found out that when I moved everybody off the screen, they weren't able to use the chat function. So I'm going to move everybody back, which I evidently have to do one person at a time, getting to know Google Meet. And if you do have, if you want to turn on your camera, you can. If you want to put something in the chat, you can. But I'm going to be bringing you all back in, and you're welcome to put some questions in the chat for Steve, and we'll hang around a few more minutes and see what people are asking. So,
and while you're bringing
totally
people on,
yes.
And while you're bringing people on, I want to rant a little bit about why we're using Google Meet.
Yes.
It's been in the news over the last few weeks that Zoom decided they wanted to claim ownership of all content presented through Zoom. And I'm sure
if you're just a member, even if you're just attending that,
right.
They own whatever you said. Yeah, sorry, Catherine. I didn't realize when I made everybody a viewer, they couldn't chat. I will fix that.
And yet my point was, I'm sure no product person was involved in that decision. That was a law decision, right? Somebody said, oh, we ought to do this for some random reason without having any understanding of how it would impact their business. And as I understand it, they've backed off that since that blew up in the press. But it's like in
No, they didn't
everything
back
we
off that. They actually just backed off the we won't use your stuff to train AI, and I don't think they backed off the we own your stuff.
okay, well, the real point is the product manager should be looking at this from two standpoints at all times. How does this impact our customers? How does this benefit our company?
Yeah.
And that decision was made by lawyers without involving the product manager. And I hope, I hope, unless the product manager went, oh, wouldn't this be great? We could become the next chat AI.
That doesn't sound good. Yeah. So, yeah, that was what. So we did originally plan this on Zoom. I've been shifting these things to Google Meet for now. And I don't even know where we should be with this, but that's a separate conversation.
Yeah,
Hey, everybody, you've got
I took
Steve
us
for
down
a
a
few
path
more minutes.
took us down a path we should have gone.
We're great at ranting. If anybody has any questions for Steve, please do put them in the chat. Everybody should have access to the chat now. I hear my stuff in my headphones. Is somebody sending me a message?
I'm not seeing it yet. But
okay.
while we're waiting, I've also been working with a lot of teams lately that are shifting, who say they are shifting from project management to product management, and yet what they're doing is still some of the same dysfunction that caused Agile to occur. This whole build me this feature as opposed to solve me this problem. And so I go back to more and more as I work with teams, I'm starting to write stories in the context of the question I'm trying to address rather than the feature I want to build. Oh, Catherine, what a good question. How do you explain product management to people who don't understand what product management is? Wow. I once had a really good answer to this, and it's not coming to me right now. But let me say that product managers guide a product through its life cycle, making decisions as to what capabilities should be added or not, and making decisions about how to invest either in this product or other products going forward. And they're the ones who ultimately say, you know what, the product has reached the end of its life and it's time to be retired. A better perhaps example is product managers, and product managers are like the fathers of a product. And I use that word somewhat carefully and tenuously, but yeah, it's going to go weird. So just pretend it doesn't. I think of development as the mother of the product because they do actual work. And the father's like there at the idea stage and then disappears for 9 months. So yeah, I shouldn't have gone there, but it's funny. My friend Rich Marinoff has a similar definition of it's like parenting, and you've got to ease your child into the world. You have to not just build the product, but launch the product, which in most product management teams, they're not even involved with. They say, wow, we've got this product, let's throw it over the wall to the sales guys and hope they can sell it. So it's really guiding a product through its life from idea to retirement. And the different, one more rant, and project management just does one cycle of that. Project management says, we're gonna do one release and then we're done. And yet every product, if it's software, and even if it's not, every product has to be maintained. Your house needs to be maintained, your car needs to be maintained. And so it's like it's guiding the maintenance or planning the maintenance of your products.
Let me read what Ralitza wrote, and then we'll ask Jude's question. Ralitza says, Agile wasn't meant to be used just to build features. It's just that a lot of companies used it to shorten the traditional project delivery timelines, which basically forced developers to be so feature-driven. Management was like, oh, here's a way where we can force people to work faster and give them the illusion of control. The Agile issue is really exasperated by the dysfunctional ways companies tend to implement it, and Ralitza would know. Let's ask, thank you. Let's ask Jude's question since we only have a few more minutes. Jude says, how do we decipher who is a good product manager when helping to hire for a business? Recruiters are clueless, and so are business folks. I know some things, but not enough to help in hiring them.
Wow, some really good questions. Yeah, it's really hard to read a lot of job descriptions, and it's like even the hiring manager doesn't know what they want. My friend Karen Holtzblatt is a recruiter, and she says almost all the product management job descriptions she sees is what I refer to as a purple squirrel. Now, purple squirrels don't exist in nature, first of all, and it's different from a unicorn in that a purple squirrel also will work for peanuts. So a purple squirrel
I'm not ready with my, there we go.
A purple squirrel is like, we're looking for somebody who, oh, I saw one the other day that wanted 20 years experience in social media.
Sorry.
And it's like, who wrote this, right? But yeah, I've got some good job descriptions on my website at productgrowthleaders.com. But it should include, I'm sorry, let me do another one. One of the services that we offer at Product Growth Leaders is a roles and responsibilities, like RACI workshop. And it's amazing the number of people who have no concept of the scope of any of our jobs. Who does acceptance testing? Who does validation? Who writes stories? And almost all of those involve an HR person. And you know, the first time it happened, the HR person came to the room, and I thought, oh shoot, who have I offended? And it turns out it was everybody. But no, the HR person came and she said, I want to know what product managers do too, because I'm the one who's trying to find them. And so we went through this long list of responsibilities and said, this is product management, this is development, this is UX, this is sales engineering. And that work has to be done at a company for every different company, because every company is different, right? So going through kind of every step in the planning process and saying who's going to take the lead on this and who's going to take the lead on that is a very valuable exercise, whether you use someone like me or Debbie to do it or do it yourself. And usually when it's done so high level as to be meaningless, right? You really want to get down into how does a thing go through the system?
Okay, thank you. And Karen's question is, and then we'll do Sharon's question. Karen asks, could you please recommend some books and sources about product management?
Well, I bet I can. Let's see here. How about Turn Ideas into Products by Steve Johnson? Yeah, so, you know, I love Marty Kagan's books for inspiration. You know, I'm sorry?
I'm not a fan of Marty. I think he's really been disempowering UX. Okay,
that's cool. My real point was, you know, I see him. His books are popular,
yes.
but I didn't necessarily find them to be primers. You know, how do you actually do the job of product management, which is why I wrote my book, Turn Ideas into Products. There are lots of books. My current favorite is The Right It by a name that will have to come to me later. It's a wonderful book that really talks about building experimentation in at every step of the process. And what I see in a lot of the companies I work with is they start with an idea. I mean, the beginning of their product journey is a whole bunch of smart people, no, a whole bunch of executives in a room coming up with ideas, as opposed to a whole bunch of people aggregating information from customer-facing teams as well as customers to let that discovery drive the ideation. But I digress. He talks a lot about testing ideas with the minimum amount of work. And you've probably read Lean Startup. One of the best ideas in that book that is almost universally misunderstood is the concept of MVP, which was intended to be an experiment. And I get emails from people saying, how much should I spend on an MVP? And the answer is $0. And they're like, well, how can you program something with $0? And the answer is you shouldn't be programming yet until you have validated the idea in other ways. And I'm reminded of in the 60s, they were experimenting, IBM was experimenting with voice-controlled, Alexa type things, believe it or not. And everybody said they wanted to be able to talk to their computer. So they made a computer that could recognize human language. It was really cool. But what it actually was a microphone connected to a headset of a secretary in the next room who was typing everything, and it was displaying on that person's screen. And they quickly found out that we hate that. We hate dictation. We're getting better at it. And yes, I see Jenna's comment. Yeah, the problem with common sense is, as Voltaire said, common sense is not so common.
Certainly not. And Sharon had a question, which was, in the aughts, I worked with an extremely well-running team as a researcher that had a product marketing manager responsible for revenue and identifying problems, plus a product manager responsible for building the product. They were joined at the hip and jointly owned the roadmap. Does no one use this model anymore?
That is a very common model. We used to say the product manager gets the product to the shelves and the product marketing manager gets the product to fly off the shelves. They clearly want to be, joined in sync. I have often encouraged companies to add a product marketing function. And here's a crazy idea. Product marketing is to marketing as product management is to development. That is to say, product marketing finds problems for buyers and their sellers and works with a marketing organization to develop solutions, the same way product management should be working with development. Instead of saying, I'll do the work myself or I will tell you what to build, think of the marketing communications and other marketing roles in your company as the creators, just as development teams, product teams are the creators.
And that's why I think a lot of people watching this live or later might be like, hey, we wanted to be the problem finders and the problem solvers.
Yeah, I think a lot of product managers do say that, and I disagree.
Or I mean, we in UX.
Oh, well, yeah, you and I still need to talk some more about problem finding and problem solving, but I do agree that UX spans both of those. But at some point, we should talk a little bit about the level of problem that we're asking product management to find versus the level of problem UX is trying to find. And I believe the answer is that we're finding the big problem without the detail, and you want to get past that to the actual core problem. But first we have somebody, and usually not a committee, needs to identify what problems are meaningful enough to move to that next level. I mean, you can't start doing solutioning until you truly understand the problem. And most of the research that you see is not deep enough
Yeah,
to
not
drive
actionable.
solution.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I wanted to make sure we wind down soon. We marked this webinar as going no later than 45 past. So let me give Steve the opportunity to say some last words and promote anything he's been up to lately.
Great. Well, thank you. I've been primarily working with teams on roles and responsibilities, on the fundamentals of building good products, but also how do we get those products into the market, and how do we determine what products we're not going to build with strategic planning, right, if you will. And I also invite you to attend our Friday product conversations. My business partner, Grant Hunter, facilitates this discussion of one or two questions that drive that are concerning to product managers in the world, and we find that, well, a lot of us find that we don't have anybody to talk to. We don't have anybody to talk about product management to. I mean, our spouses don't want to hear it. They've been hearing it already for years. It's like, I'm done with that, right? But, I will say, you should be looking for opportunities to engage with people, as we do on Fridays in our product conversations, to talk about how we do this here. I mean, one of my favorite things when doing a class is the product managers talking to each other about the way we do things here at their company. And a quick story. We were talking about other sources of insight. And somebody said, oh, there's a lot of good information in Salesforce. And 21 people on the call said, wait, you have access to Salesforce? And he said, oh, yeah, I used to be a sales engineer. Now I'm a product manager, but I've still got my login. And somebody else says, that's funny you say that. I used to be in support and I still have my login for the ticketing system. I find all sorts of good information there. Turns out there's no normalization in product management in most organizations. So one of the things that I've been working on a lot over the last few years is helping teams implement product ops the same way we've implemented DevOps or sales ops. It's a standardizing function so that we all know how to do the job at this organization. So that wasn't really the promotional thing you wanted, but I'm available all the time on LinkedIn, and you can come to my website, productgrowthleaders.com, and get in touch with me. I love to hear from people.
Do that. All right. So I'm going to, since we don't have a closing song here in Google Meet, I am going to be pressing the stop record button. But just a reminder to everybody, since my stuff is cut off today, I don't know why Google did this, but don't forget to look at our future webinar schedule at cxcc.to/events. We have a whole bunch of them scheduled into September and October, including a really exciting one on what we should expect from AI right now versus what we're getting. And some other stuff on metrics and, oh gosh, it's a whole pile of stuff. So check those out. Nearly all of them are free. You're getting lots of claps, Steve. I hope you can see that. Catherine says, can't find you on LinkedIn. No, it's definitely Steve Johnson, STEVE space JOHNSON, and he looks just like that. So you should be able to find him.
And my handle on LinkedIn is sjohnson717, which happens to be my birthday.
Oh, I'll put that in my calendar. Sorry we missed it this year.
There you go.
So also remember to check out our Patreon, which is also doubling as our email mailing list, patreon.com/CXCC, and our new YouTube channel, where this will appear in 2 weeks. Patreons will get it first. Patreon paid members, youtube.com/@CX-CC. So with a thanks again to Steve, I'm going to press the stop recording button. Okay.